we have a hydrogen fuel cell that essentially replaces the battery. And then we have a hydrogen cylinder with a very small amount of hydrogen, but it's highly pressurized. And essentially, we are creating energy from that hydrogen through the fuel cell in mid-flight.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 393. Are hydrogen drones ready to take center stage? For that question, we head to Israel to speak with Ben Levinson, co-founder and CEO of HevenDrones, a manufacturer of heavy-lift, actionable drones capable of solving a range of commercial, infrastructure, humanitarian, and military challenges. From autonomous last-mile delivery to defense missions, emergency response, and infrastructure repair, the company's fully customizable drone solutions deliver cutting-edge performance, patented stability, and superior lifting capability. Powered by an expert team with military, engineering, and scientific backgrounds, the company enjoys a strategic partnership with Plug Power and the Israel Ministry of Defense. In February, HevenDrones launched its first hydrogen-powered drone for commercial use, the H2D55. With 5 times greater energy efficiency than traditional lithium battery-powered drones, the H2D55 is capable of flying for 100 minutes with a payload capacity of 15 pounds. The launch of HevenDrones' hydrogen product line addresses the challenge of flight endurance and payload capacity associated with lithium battery-powered drones. Hydrogen-powered drones also reduces the long-term environmental impact linked to lithium mining. Without the need to frequently replace batteries, hydrogen fuel cells will also lower long-term ownership costs for organizations implementing drone technology at scale. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Ben talks about HevenDrones, the company's innovative hydrogen drone solutions, and the promise and future of hydrogen propulsion systems. But before we hear from Ben, I want to thank those of you who have been supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have a great story on the use of drones that you'd like to share on a podcast, contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. Now let's learn about hydrogen propulsion systems with Ben Levinson of HevenDrones. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Ben to introduce himself.
Yeah, so I am Ben Levinson, founder and CEO at HevenDrones.
Ben, tell us about HevenDrones. What does the company do?
If we look around at the growing drone market, we'll see that most of the drones in the market act as flying cameras or flying sensors. And there are many, many use cases to be done and use cases that can get a value from having a flying camera collecting information. What we're doing at HevenDrones is building the core technology for the next level of drones, taking drones from these flying cameras to flying robots, so drones that can, of course, collect the information, but then be able to do something, to act based on that information. So that is really what drove me to found the company. About 4 years ago, formally about 3.5 years ago, was when we founded HevenDrones. And we really focused early on how can we lift significant payloads with drones, and then how can we take these significant payloads and do a variety of different use cases, doing and exploring about taking drones, from the flying camera aspect to flying robots.
There are a lot of drone manufacturers. What makes HevenDrones stand out from the others?
What we're doing at HevenDrones is really looking differently at drones and building the next generation of drones. There's a lot of different technologies going into this. We'll touch, of course, on the hydrogen, which is a really important aspect, the design of the systems, right? So we have a really unique design that allows our drones to be most effective as a flying robot. And then a lot of other core technologies, whether it's on the software side with AI or on the hardware side, the way we build our drones, and then also looking and really focusing on scale. So scale is really, really important for us, both from the pricing perspective, from the maturity of the systems. We have a facility in Israel where we can produce up to hundreds of drones a month. So it's really combining all the different aspects of the system of the drone, but also the ecosystem that will allow drones to actually be adapted and used in more and more use cases and really scaled up significantly.
How would you describe the design of your drone?
As I mentioned in the beginning, we really started off on the aspect of the flying robot of lifting significant payloads and doing a variety of tasks, right? Having the drone work as flying robots. And that was great, but we were really limited by the flight time because these drones are powered, our initial line of drones are powered by batteries. And therefore, we're getting the 30 plus minutes of flight time, especially when you get to heavier payloads, right? Getting to the 75 pounds of payload, the batteries become less and less efficient. And we went out and we did a search for a more effective energy source, and ended up getting to hydrogen. And we were fortunate to be selected as the exclusive development partner and procurement partner of the Israeli Ministry of Defense for hydrogen drones. So that's a really significant project. We signed a variety of different contracts and partnerships in the hydrogen ecosystem. So from the fuel cells to cylinders to autonomous refueling, and we can touch on that deeply. But essentially, we realized that to really have drones work as flying robots, we have to be able to combine two things that kind of contradict each other. Because on one hand, we want to have these drones be able to work as a robot, meaning go up and down, right, and hover for as much as time as we need, work at different speeds, different heights, etc. Right? So that's more the operational profile of a multi-rotor. On the other hand, we want these systems to be highly scalable. And therefore, we don't want to have a limited range of operation. And we also understand that in some scenarios, you want to be able to get from point to point, be very fast, right? Of course, if you want to get fast and far, then the operational profile of a fixed-wing aircraft is probably what you're looking for. So we designed our new hydrogen drone to really be the best of both worlds and kind of be a new breed, where at the core of it is a multi-rotor that can hover for a full 2-hour flight time. And this can be a hovering mission or other aspects of flying at different speeds, different directions, different heights, etc. But we can then also fly for significant speeds and get to over 100 kilometers of flight distance. So this is really, we believe a significant aspect of flying robots and allowing them to really scale up in different use cases. But this is a really unique design that we implemented in our new hydrogen line.
How does the design help you get more speed?
The way we designed it is that, like any multi-rotor, when you have propellers, the propellers stick outside the body of the drone. So what we did is that we developed an aerodynamic design with relatively small wings that anyhow don't exceed the width of propellers. So essentially, we're not adding any footprint to the drone. We're just making it a lot more effective and efficient and faster, right? So, this is really what's going into it. Part of our consideration has also been how can we make this, relatively small or very small footprint, and it also allows it easier for operators to use it. So there's really a lot of different considerations going into the system. And again, what we see as the common thing we're focused on is how can drones really operate as effective flying robots.
Do the rear props tilt to help with the forward speed?
The drone does have a little bit of a tilt the way it flies when it's going faster, but we don't have tilting rotors. We're really focused on simplicity, right? Making these systems very simple and affordable, having high redundancy. So we try to really take out a lot of the complication that can happen to the drone so that we make sure it's as safe as possible and as simple as possible, less maintenance. So things like that are really important for us.
How did the company decide to incorporate hydrogen as a fuel source?
It really started as a search for the most effective energy source with a real focus on the energy density and the weight of the system. If we look at the automotive industry or the land vehicle industry, if you take a truck, a forklift, a car, energy sources have a larger motor to power it, right? In our case, the weight is really, really significant. So it really all started with a search for the most effective energy source that led us to hydrogen. And we understood that for this to succeed, there are so many parts of the puzzle, right, that have to be solved to make this into a commercially viable drone and system. So we really searched for a core development partner, development customer that we can work on developing this with. And, ended up finding that in the Israeli Ministry of Defense, which we have an amazing relationship, regardless of this project. And this has really allowed us to work hand in hand with a very strong customer and solve all the issues from safety to supply chain of hydrogen in a real world scenario.
Typically, there's a lithium battery that plugs in and out of the drone. Is there something similar with hydrogen?
So the answer is today, after a lot of work, basically yes. We have a hydrogen fuel cell that essentially replaces the battery, although we do have very small batteries on board for backup. So if anything happens, we can fly based on batteries for a few minutes and land safely. And then we have a hydrogen cylinder with a very small amount of hydrogen, but it's highly pressurized. And essentially, we are creating energy from that hydrogen through the fuel cell in mid-flight.
Does HevenDrones produce the fuel cells?
It's a great question. So we work with a few of the leading companies in the world for our fuel cells. We don't develop the core fuel cell by ourselves, although we do a lot of customization work and, of course, the integration to make this work. So we work with a company out of the UK called Intelligent Energy, great company, real leading in the fuel cell for UAV space. And we have a great relationship with them. And we also have a unique relationship, a development partnership with a company called Plug Power. Plug Power is a US-based public company listed on the NASDAQ. And they've been around for over 20 years in the hydrogen space. And their traditional business has really been around forklifts and other land vehicles. So they have, I think it's about over 70,000 hydrogen forklifts operational today in warehouse of huge companies like Amazon and Walmart and others and Home Depot. And as they've been looking for new verticals, they started working with additional companies. And we were fortunate to be their partner for drones. So we with them are developing larger fuel cells for, of course, larger drones.
Are hydrogen fuel cells lighter than lithium batteries?
We look at really the additional energy and flight time that we can get because the fuel cells themselves are slightly heavier than the batteries. But if we take everything into account, it's about 5 times, and it can even get to about 8 times the amount of energy that we get and we can use, which of course translates into flight time. And because of this unique design, it's 5 times the amount of flight time, but about 10 times the amount of flight distance, right? Because we're also going about double the speed. So that's why it's a really, really significant game changer.
How much can the drone carry?
The first drone that we launched, our H2D55, has a 7-kilogram payload capacity, which actually is slightly less than our battery equivalent. We're scaling that up now throughout the end of the year until 30 kilograms and more.
How does swapping out the hydrogen fuel cell work?
It's actually very, very simple and has a lot of advantages over batteries. So if you want to fly for 10 hours, in a row, then just every 2 hours, you take out the hydrogen cylinder as if it was a battery and replace it with a new one. Very, very simple. The other advantage of a hydrogen drone versus a battery drone, and this kind of takes us also to the automotive industry, where we know we're all used to driving gasoline cars. You pull up to the gas station, you fill up your car, and in about 60 to 90 seconds, you're back going on the road, right? And we all know the challenges of battery-powered cars, right? If you look at the Teslas, where it takes more time to charge them. So the hydrogen really gives us the advantage of a refueling capability. So you refuel, it takes a few minutes. But then, of course, we're green, right? And we're 100% renewable, especially when we're talking about green hydrogen. So that's another significant advantage over batteries is that it's not only, 4, 5, 8 times the amount of flight time, but it's also a much, much shorter refueling time. And as mentioned, in some scenarios, you could just swap out very easily the hydrogen cylinder. And our design has been utilized around that. So it's very, very simple to do that. And it really has been designed to make this a very, very simple swap.
What's it like maintaining the fuel cells compared to lithium batteries?
It's a lot more simpler than the lithium batteries. We also all know the issue with lithium batteries, and this is kind of similar to our phones, where we all get frustrated. We buy a phone and the phone works for a full day or something similar to that. And then after a few months, we see it going down to 8 hours, and after a year, it's down to 6 hours. And then you find yourself at 2 p.m., right, where you have to recharge your phone, which is very frustrating if you travel a lot, right? We have that same issue, we know in the drone issue with batteries, right? That after a few hundred cycles, we start seeing it going significantly down. So in the case of fuel cells, we have over 1,000 hours of operational, cycles until we have to, do some maintenance on them. And then, of course, the cycles are about 4 or 5 times to more that the amount of time for battery, right? So if you combine those two numbers, it's really, really significant advantage over the regular batteries.
How do the drones perform in extreme weather conditions, especially in the cold?
So fuel cells, they do have some limitation with extremely cool weather. Part of what we're doing in HevenDrones, this I think is part of really the important work of not only having a technology, but a real product, right, is making sure that this system as a whole, the drone as a whole, can operate in much cooler weathers. So that's part of the work that we do as a company. The variety of our innovations that we have is essentially what allows the drone to operate in extreme weathers, for example, in rain, etc., even if the fuel cell itself doesn't have that. And that's, of course, other work that we do on top of it.
Are all of your drones powered by hydrogen, or is it just the H2D55?
Our traditional line of drones has been powered by battery, and we still have that line of drones. And we're actually also, we do have new models, and we're always good with new models. There is one challenge with hydrogen drones, and that is the supply chain of hydrogen, right? So imagine you buy yourself an amazing sports car, a Ferrari, then you realize that it uses this very, very unique fuel that you can't get in your neighborhood. That becomes a challenge. After you drive it once and enjoy it, you realize that it really becomes challenging. So we have a few interesting ways of overcoming that, including being able to offer our customers an electrolyzer. So essentially, this is imagine a cabinet, something like 6 feet by 6 feet, and this connects to water and electricity, and then you're creating hydrogen out of thin air. And this can also automatically refuel your hydrogen fuel cells. But my point is that hydrogen as a new technology is still getting adapted, and therefore it's great for many customers, but some customers will still want the basic battery drones. And also the basic battery drones are still somewhat cheaper, even though the total cost of ownership is already cheaper on the hydrogen side. But the upfront cost is still a bit higher, and therefore we do have a battery line. And there are some use cases where the half-an-hour flight is more than enough. And in that scenario, sometimes it makes more sense to stay with the batteries.
What type of customer is best suited for hydrogen drones right now?
The customers that benefit significantly from this are first and foremost the customers that really need the additional range or operational time, right? There are many customers that half an hour just doesn't do the job. And a great example is ship to shore, right? If you have an offshore platform, an oil rig that is outside, right? It's, a good 30 miles offshore, and you just can't get there with the battery drone, then you need to have the additional range, right? So, those are great examples. It's also scenarios where it's a high value use case. And if our customers won't mind investing upfront more money and also investing in the electrolyzers that allow them to have a continuous resupply of hydrogen. So the high value and the use cases where they need the additional range or operational time is definitely where we're seeing the first adopters. And then from there, of course, bringing it more to the masses, into the day-to-day use cases, we're just being able to do, 2 hours operational time versus 4, even in a use case of drone delivery, for example, which allows us to do much more deliveries, in between refueling or recharging.
And obviously, if a customer was able to find a local supplier of hydrogen, that would be an option for meeting their fuel needs.
Definitely. And it's something we also work with our customers around the world to supply that. We definitely do that. And it's amazing actually to see how the hydrogen ecosystem and economy has been evolving tremendously. And if you just, go to Google and type in hydrogen, you'll see so many hydrogen projects or global hydrogen projects. You'll see so many countries out in the world advancing the hydrogen ecosystem. And obviously, it's significant advantages, of course, on the clean tech aspect. But what's interesting is that with the advancements in hydrogen, there still aren't many use cases where there's a clear value proposition for hydrogen. And specifically in our case in drones, going from the 30 minutes, to the half an hour plus, the value there is so clear that we're taking part in a variety of big global projects where the different countries and big companies, they want to prove that hydrogen has significant value. And drones, in many cases are chosen to be that first use case where there is no question that once you go from 30 minutes to 2 hours, the value is there. Versus, for example, the question of a hydrogen car that Toyota, for example, manufactures versus a Tesla, right? Where it's still somewhat questionable. It's really an exciting time in the hydrogen ecosystem. And we're excited to be working with a lot of exciting projects and big companies and countries really looking to build out the ecosystem, the infrastructure to support the hydrogen economy of the future.
Now, we've been talking almost exclusively about the propulsion system, but tell us about the drone itself. What are some of its capabilities?
Going back for a moment to where I started off, our vision is really clear and our focus is clear. We want to develop drones that can add significant value by not only collecting information, but doing something based on that information. even with our battery drones, we really started focusing on how can we add a significant value, even if the flight time and range was limited. And now we're taking that, of course, even further with the hydrogen. The one classic example is logistics, and there's many different kinds of logistics. In a lot of the logistical drone use cases today, on one hand, drones are automated or autonomous systems. On the other hand, you still have a lot of human interaction with the drone. So we developed our autonomous container concept. What that means is that the drone itself has a universal connection, and this drone is able to fly over a warehouse, identify a specific package, land on it precisely in this autonomous manner, connect to it, and take it out to its destination, drop it off, and again, end-to-end autonomy. So is a specific example of how we really take the advantage of a drone as a unmanned or automated system and use this as a real additional value as an end-to-end solution. So logistics, I think, is really exciting. B2B, ship to shore, and down the road, of course, also to last mile delivery. Some of the other things that I mentioned that we're looking at is construction sites and what's the role of drones in these sites. And this includes mining sites, utility use cases, right? So we know that drones are used to monitoring on electric lines. How can we have drones doing repairing on electric lines or installation on electric lines and other utility use cases? And that's been a very interesting point for us. Emergency services, fire policing, and other things are really interesting. And I think the value there is very, very high. And then also things like agriculture and solar farms. And in all these use cases, we really try to not only look at the drone as a specific vehicle doing a specific task, but how do we think about an ecosystem of tens of drones and very often collaborating with land vehicles? And agriculture is a great example of that. And then how can we offer an end-to-end automated solution for a customer, combining different capabilities in different systems? So all those are really use cases. Obviously, not all of them yet are fully commercialized, but these are just some examples of the industries and use cases that we're exploring and actually utilizing once these drones can actually work as flying robots.
In addition to the Middle East, where will we find HevenDrones today?
Actually, exciting news. We just opened up our first U.S. office out of Miami. And so our U.S. presence has been growing. And we already have a few drones flying there. We're going to have a lot more in the coming months. So that's exciting. And, we really are starting to grow across the globe from Asia. Middle East is a very exciting market for us, especially as Israel and the UAE and some other countries have signed the Abraham Accords, the peace treaties. Normalization is what they called it a few years back. And there's great relationships and opportunities there, definitely in the US, and then also some work in Europe and Africa. So it's really across the region. We really focus on finding great partners that can help us go globally. And that's been a significant focus of ours.
When did you start HevenDrones?
I actually got involved in the drone industry about 5 years ago in a national project where we used drones at first to identify fires and then to put them out. And this was a specific scenario within Israel where it was relatively easy to get to these fires because it was in a designated area. And through learning about drones through this project, this is really where I got the understanding and the inspiration that drones as flying cameras that can identify, for example, a fire. That's great. But if we can't put out the fire, if we can't do something based on the information that the drone learned, the value is still limited, right? And that's really what got me. So it's been 3.5, almost 4 years coming up in the summer that we've been working at HevenDrones.
Was that project the impetus behind starting the company?
Taking a drone from a flying camera to a flying robot is really where the value is. That really was the what they call the aha moment that got me to believe that I knew it's going to be a challenging journey to found a company and scale a company significantly. But the value here, right, and in this fast-growing industry can be so significant that it really is worth the journey, right? It's obviously a journey building a company.
When did you begin looking at hydrogen as a possible fuel source?
It's been over 2 years already that we've been looking at hydrogen. We had over a year-long development program, again, with the Israeli Ministry of Defense, and that was a very, very long and tedious program. And, we really searched for the best partners in the world and signed some nice agreements. And that project was finished in November, so about 4 months ago. And then just a few weeks ago, we launched our first commercially viable hydrogen drone, which is very exciting.
What have the last 4 years taught you about the drone industry?
I think the drone industry is still in its early steps. And, I gave the example of, you can ask your spouse, your kids, your colleagues, when was the last time they interacted with the drone on a day-to-day basis. And most of us still don't interact with drones. We don't see them in our construction sites. We don't get our food with them. We don't really fight our wars. I'm not talking about the large unmanned planes. I'm talking about the regular drones out there. So I think there's a lot of growth in the industry. I think COVID was an accelerating factor for that. And what we're seeing going on in Ukraine now, right? That's also another accelerating fact, and showing the world the value of what can be done with automated systems flying through the sky. So I think the market, is really, really significant. It's the right time to be building a significant drone company. With that said, I think there's a lot of patience needed with drones. Drones on one hand are really, really cool. On the other hand, drones are aircraft, right? And anyone who's been working with the FAA understands, the challenges and maturity needed, right? I really had this moment where I really understood that, to succeed in this business, you really have to build out an aircraft program. And we had to go out and hire, some of the best people from different sectors, from the engineering, of course, all the way to, quality control, right? And assembly. And, getting a ISO 9001 or 9100 approved facilities and building out assembly capabilities, all these things that we had to do because, again, we're building aircraft. So, you need a patience in this journey, but I'm a big believer in the potentials really of the drone world. And that now is the right time to be building a significant drone company.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs?
I mentioned patience, and it's one that for entrepreneurs, it's always hard to hear, right? But I think it's important to take a deep breath and really make sure that the team, the company is really prepared for a long journey. I think another important point, and this is really a statement that's correct for all of us, is really to focus on working together to make drones more accessible to the masses. I like to use the term enabling or accessing the blue ocean. So there's this huge blue ocean of drones, right? And being able to have drones added value in our day-to-day lives in so many different use cases. And we have to work as an ecosystem to make this blue ocean more accessible. It's not the job of one company, one regulator. It's really all of our jobs together. So I think working together, understanding that it's not a question of competing with drone companies, but it's really competing with having drones become the mainstream vehicle or tool or robot for many different use cases. I think that is the main challenge. Of course, each company has their own core value proposition, but how can we really work together to get to the ultimate goal for all of us, which is seeing drones being used by the masses and adding significant value to our daily lives.
What's the future look like for HevenDrones? What might we see over the next several months?
We're really launching this new line of hydrogen drones that adds on top of our battery drones. So we're going to see more and more use cases coming about with the new technology. We're also really focused on global growth, right? So as these technologies come to fruition and mature as aircraft, they're really focusing on a variety of different use cases and scaling them out internationally. So you're also going to hear of some exciting partnerships, coming out both internationally, but really also focused on use cases. Now, we are talking about making this blue ocean more accessible. We're big believers, and a big part of our strategy is partnerships, both in verticals. So, we are experts in our domain of flying robots and the drones themselves. And we partner with a variety of different experts in specific industries that allow us to make these drones for firefighting or agriculture or solar farms or homeland security. So that is a big force multiplier for us. You'll see some of that coming. And then really also focus on international growth and having these systems really start being deployed in their masses.
Ben, is there anything that we missed that we should talk about?
We're really excited and open to work with other entrepreneurs and other companies in this space with the goal of bringing this to the market, faster and better. We're, really excited to hear from other companies that are interested in reaching out. We like to say that the sky is not the limit in our scenario. So, the limit is really the imagination, right, of what a drone can do. And as, we start speaking to more and more people, industry leaders in different industries, all of a sudden they use their industry knowledge, say, wow, it's not only this, it's something else. I spoke to one of the leading CEOs in one of Israel's largest construction companies today, right? I met with him. And we came about a specific use case within construction. And then all of a sudden, throughout the discussion, we started discussing more and more use cases where the drone can add value. So, I think it really is, the potential of the drone is limitless. Utilizing the sky is not the limit. So it's really a question of how much we can innovate and we can push these drones out to the world. So we're excited and looking forward to hearing from anyone out there that's interested in really further discussing how we can bring this to the world as fast and best as possible.
And for my final question, Ben, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of the drone industry?
I think it's a very bright future. There are challenges to overcome like any new technology. If we take a step back and look, over the past few hundred years or, just a few thousand years of humanity, right? We see a very clear trend. We as human beings want to become more efficient. And, if we had to back in the day go out and, work our hands on the field to get our food, to do our agricultural work, then all of a sudden we had plows and we used animals, right? And then we took that forward and we used machinery and then tractors. And these are, of course, becoming unmanned and automated systems. Obviously, we don't want to pollute neither noise or the skies. So there are challenges we have to overcome. But in general, there's so much value that the drones can give. So I think the future of drones is bright. And we're going to see more and more value that drones are going to bring to the world. It won't be without challenge, but the future is going to be really, really exciting.
That's it for episode 393 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Ben Levinson of HevenDrones. I want to thank Ben for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about HevenDrones or want to connect with Ben, check out the webpage at HevenDrones.com, and Heaven is spelled Heven. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to DroneRadioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.